Hey folks, welcome to the second episode of PPTB Unboxed. In this video, we are going to do connection management where we would create several different connections of different types, and then we are going to run multiple tools and then see how those connections are authenticated and how the tools behave with those connections. So let's dive in. So first, let's look at the connection management. In the activity bar, if you go to the connection, you would see list of all the connections that you have created. If you have not created any connections, that's fine too. Now let's go ahead and then add a new connection. So when you add a new connection, you are presented with the module where you have to give your connection name, authentication type, and several other details. So let's give a connection name here. Now there are several different types of authentication that you can do with Dataverse. We have Microsoft Login, which uses OAuth connection, which is a recommended authentication type. Then you can also use client ID and secret, or username and password. Or if you have a connection string already present somewhere else, you can use that connection string and then paste the connection string, and then we will determine which of the authentication type does it meet. Does it meet auth, client ID secret, or username and password? If it doesn't meet any of those things, it is gonna show an incorrect connection been created, which you will have an opportunity to go and fix. So now this one will be an OAuth connection. We are gonna cover Power Platform API in a future video, so I'm not gonna cover that right now. So let me copy the URL of the environment. That's going to be my URL for the environment, and then here I can pick the category of my connection, whether it's going to be dev, test, UAT, or prod. Let's pick this is going to be a UAT environment, for example, and you'll see that the color changed. So as you pick your environments, the colors are changing. Now you're not restricted to those colors either. These are just recommended colors, but you have the opportunity to pick any colors you want. So let's change the color a little bit just for fun sake. And then this is the category option. So categories are if you're working on multiple clients, or if you have multiple um, domains within your organization, or business groups within your organizations, you can create multiple categories for those groups, right? So it's kind of like grouping all of your connections. But within that group, you can have dev, test, UAT, prod, several other environments, right? So that gives you a good like good option to group all the connections for a specific group, and then that helps you with the search, and then also when you're building up the connections, it helps you, identify which clients or which group it belongs to. When you're and we'll see in when we actually connect to tools, you will also see those kind of options show up on the connection selection, and then also several other places. So I'll pinpoint those things where we can see environment colors, where you can see category colors as well. So in this case, let's go ahead and create a new category, and then we'll call that category. So this is your like client name, group name, whatever that is. I'm going to call it as PPTB Unboxed. And then again, because you're creating a new category, you have an opportunity to pick color for that category. So let's pick a little bit purplish. And then if you scroll down, you have an option to select your browser. So this is very helpful when, let's say, you are authenticating your connection with a specific browser, because you have a profile on that browser and you're already authenticated on that particular browser. So what it does is when you're authenticating, it will open only that specific browser for authentication. So you don't have to re-enter all your credentials. And that has happened in the past where if you're not selecting the right browser profile, it will open up in the current browser profile. And if it opens up in the current browser profile, you'll have to close it and then go back and then restart the connection. It's a pain. So we are trying to solve for that problem here, right? And then you have an option. So currently I'm only supporting Chrome and Edge. So you can select Chrome or you can select Edge. So I'm going to select Chrome. And then because I know that this specific URL is already configured for automatically authenticating it against one specific profile, which is this Power Maverick profile. So that's that. Then you also have an option to enter your username or your email. That helps you to automatically just log into the system. So you don't have to keep on entering the email of that you want to authenticate with. So it just refills that login information for you. Now you can also use a specific client ID. Client ID is not required in most of the cases, but then if you're using Power Platform API, then client ID then becomes crucial, which we will talk about in detail in our future videos. Again, tenant ID is also optional, but in case if you are having issues authenticating, then that's when you want to look at providing client ID or providing tenant IDs. Okay. So I've filled in all my details. Let's go ahead and add this. So as you can see, now new group or category got created. And then I can collapse and expand this category. I can do the same thing with other categories as well. Okay. And then this is my connection. So this connection, the connection card specifically tells you what's the URL. Okay. What's the login, whether I'm using OAuth, whether I'm using client ID secret, or what type of um, authentication type I have used. Then it also provides you what environment type this connection is associated to. And then if you have set up your browser profile, it also shows you which browser profile it is associated with. Okay. Now, let's say you have a category, but then you want to change the color of the category. You don't have to open the connection. You can just change the color of the category here itself. And let's say we pick, let's say we pick green. And then if I open this connection in the edit mode, you will see that the category color now shows green automatically. You don't have to do that. So it's all linked. Yeah. So you change at one place and then everywhere else it will be reflected. Now let's add another connection. So you can add another connection and I'll name it as PPTB client secret. And we're going to change the authentication type to a client ID secret. So let's pick a URL. And then this is going to be, let's say, a production environment. So it automatically by default gives you a red color. I like that red color. I'm going to keep that red color. And then again, I can add it to an existing category, which I just created moments ago, which is your PPTB Unboxed. Now again, it gives you that category color. Now category color is loaded by default based on whatever was selected. But here also you have an opportunity to change the category color. And if you change the category color, it applies to all the connections as well as the main category. So everywhere it will change. And similarly, I know this is associated to one of my browser profiles. So I'm going to use that browser profile. Now in here, client ID, secret, and tenant becomes required. In the previous one, all of that was optional. So if you look at the previous screen, this particular section was a little bit different, and now it's different. So let's take our client ID. And let's copy our client secret. And then our tenant ID. Okay. All right. So I have all of these things now properly confirmed. Now I have an opportunity to test the connection or add a connection. When you create connections, there are several secured information that we don't want to get exposed, like client secret, client ID, your auth token, your refresh tokens. So all of those secured information is not stored in a plain text. Instead, we use the out of the box vault. So each machine like Mac OS has its own vault, whereas Windows also has its own vault key. So we are saving that secured information in a secured way and not saving it in a plain text. And if you export these connections out, we don't export those secured information out. And same thing, when you import the connections, and if the connections have secured information, because the import will not have that secured information, that import will be successful, but with a label called as incomplete. And then you will have to go in and then fill that information. We'll see how that works as well. So now I have created several connections here. If I export this out, you will see that I can export it and save it as a JSON. So let's go ahead and then save this in the downloads folder. And let's open that folder up. So this is the file that got exported out of PPTB. As you can see, it has all the connection information, but it does not have any of the secrets. So it has the URL, the environment, the authentication type, and all the other required things, but it doesn't have client secret or any other information. Now you exported the connections, but let's say someone else shared the connection file with you and you want to import that connections as well. So you can click on this import, and then you can import your connections from your existing XrmToolBox, which will be an XML file, or you can also import it from an existing Power Platform ToolBox connections as well, which will be a JSON file. So if you are selecting it from the XrmToolBox, I've also provided the steps of how you can export that connections. But if it is Power Platform ToolBox, then you already know how to export it. It's pretty straightforward. So let's use the Power Platform ToolBox JSON. Click on Next. And now it will give you an option to select a JSON file. So I have one called for PPTB connections. So I'm going to import that. And as you can see, when I imported it, it has an error. So it had one connection that had client ID secret, and then that's why it came up as incomplete, because it is missing the credentials. So when you open this up, you will see that it has the client ID, but the client secret came in as empty. Now that we have configured all of our connections, let's take a look at how we can run the tools using these connections. So you can go to the install tools. Now, if you don't have tools installed, or if you're looking for new tools, you can always go to the marketplace and then search for the tools. This was explained in our previous video, so you can look at the previous video to see how to manage your, or how to install your tools, how to search for tools. But now let's go into our installed section and then look at some of the tools. So the first one I'm gonna run is the Power Platform Solution Blueprint Generator. So most of the tools uses just single connection, and this is one of those tools. So if you are opening up a tool that uses single connection, this is the model that you will be presented with. Now, like before, this also has the same interface where you can expand and collapse your categories. And then this is the category that I had created for PPTB Unboxed, and then we had created a OAuth connection called as PPTB OAuth, and this is one that I'm going to select. Now, because it uses the profile, uh, a Chrome profile, is going to open up that Chrome profile, authenticate it, and then come back. So there you go. It opened up a browser and then came back authenticated. Now, authentication with the environment is needed just once. So if you are already authenticated to that environment, you don't need to re-authenticate with that environment over and over again. So if you open up other tools consecutively, those would open up without any need for multiple authentications. Now, here you will see several things. So let's go back to the connections so that I can walk you through how the colors actually work. So you'll see that the PPTB Unboxed has a green color, and that green color shows up under the tab. That's telling you that this is the category of that color. So if I have created several groups, then I know exactly which group I'm working with right now just by looking at that color. So I don't have to think about going back to the connections and then looking at what connections and then under which category that connection is. Then the second thing is there's a border around the tool. That's the yellow border, and that's coming from the UAT. So the environment type was set as UAT, and then we selected yellow as a color for that particular environment type, and that's what is showing up here. And then the same color shows up on the uh, footer as well. The footer tells you what's the tool name and then which connection it is authenticated with. We have also provided the name of the connection on the tab as well. Or let's say you have multiple tools open and then you want to quickly see which tab is for which connection, then this is really helpful without even opening up the tool. Okay, so then you can interact with the tool like how you would normally do. So you can select the solutions here, and you can select multiple solutions as well. So let's select all the solutions that are available and then continue and then generate the blueprint. Okay, so the solution blueprint was generated, and you will see that it has identified all the entities, plugin, and several other components. It also generates a nice looking entity diagram for you if you want that. And then it also gives you the solution distribution across multiple solutions. And then this is a new preview feature that it got added recently, where it shows if there was any cross-entity automations. And then you can export out as well. Now let's look at another tool that uses multiple connections. So I have this data migrator tool, and it needs two connections, and both the connections are required. So if you see that I have my primary connection and I have my secondary connections, and both of them are marked as required. So let's go and authenticate with the primary connection, and then let's go and authenticate with my secondary connection. Okay, both the connections are authenticated. I'm gonna confirm this, and now you will see that it has a different interface, not just the tool interface, but then the tabs. So the tab now has two categories. It has the blue and it has the orange category. So if I go back to my connections, you will see that blue is coming from my demos and orange is coming from my POCs. So just by looking at the tab, I know that which category they belong to. And sometimes if you're working on just one single group, so it would ultimately have just one color. So now if you see two colors, which means something is wrong, you might have not selected the correct connections. That gives you the indication. And then it has two borders as well. So one is green and one is red. So because we use this one, which is a green, and then we use this one, which is a red, because it uses two connections, the borders are split into two. One is green and one is red. And then in the footer as well, you'll see that now primary connection is populated with one environment. And then I have on the extreme right, I have the secondary connection that is populated with the second connection details. Similar to the first tool, every tool will have different interfaces, but they all respond to the themes. We'll look into the themes and we'll look into the settings in our next following video. But for now, we'll look at how this particular tool works. So this one, you can actually search for the entity. Then it auto maps some of the attributes for you. But then if you want to deselect everything and then just select few things that you want, I'm just going to select 4 of them. Then you can collapse this. You can filter the data. You can also use OData or Fetch XML to filter. If you're using Fetch XML to filter, you can open up another tool called Open in Fetch XML Studio. We will look into that and in future videos of how you can work with multiple tools coming back and forth. I don't want to filter any data. Then you have the settings. Do you want to create, update, or delete? And then you can also toggle the batch size here. And then here is where you can do some lookup mapping. So I've not selected any lookup columns, so the lookup mapping comes up optional or comes up empty. But let's go and select one of the lookup column for contact. And then as soon as you select the lookup column as contact, this one shows up, and then you have different options whether to auto map, skip, or manual map. So if you're doing manual map, you can start adding your source and target grids and then keep on adding it so that it can do a manual map as well. And then you can actually preview the data. So here you can see this is all the data that would be migrated if I hit this migration button. But that's where you have a tool that uses 2 connections and both the connections are required. Now let's look at a tool that needs 2 connections, but the second connection is optional. So we have that option as well. So we're going to open up this data translation tool, and then you'll see the model is exactly similar to the previous data migrator. When we opened up data migrator tool, it's the same interface, right? Same model. But the only difference is that the secondary connection is now optional, which means that I don't have to select a secondary connection in order to work with this data translation tool. So I can just authenticate with one, and now you'll see the difference. I was already authenticated with this particular connection. That's why it just automatically authenticated that connection. Then I can just confirm and it loads that particular tool. Now this tool also comes from the same category because I've picked the same connection, Power Maverick connection, which is coming from that blue category. And because it's a dev connection, I have green around the tool. So in here also, you can pick your solution and then say export and load. What it's going to do is it's going to export all the translation data from that particular solution and then present it to you. And then it also automatically detects which languages have been installed on that particular environment and then show you in the drop down the list of all those languages so that you can fill in the translation for any of the missing ones. There you go. So it says I have 412 missing translations, and I have French, Hindi, and Spanish installed on my environment. So I can actually add a translation for French or Hindi or Spanish. Now, as you are working through several different tools, you will see that you have tabs here, and then you have different colors as well. So like, as I said, like if you are working with the PPTB Unboxed group, that's green. If you're working with the demo group, that's blue. Or if you're working with the POC group, that's orange. So now just by looking at the tabs and the colors below the tabs, I know exactly which tool tab is for what. Okay, and then as and when I select the tool, the footers would reflect that change, and then the borders would reflect the change based on the tool that I've selected. So if I go back here, it's going to show me that my primary is selected, but my secondary is not selected. If I come back to this one, it's going to show me a secondary and a primary. If I want to, if I have opened up a tool that doesn't require my secondary connection, but in case after loading it, I want to populate the secondary connection, I do have an option to select this, and that would give me the opportunity to select my secondary connection uh, as well. Now, if I want to quickly change a connection on a particular tool, I can also do that by clicking on this button, and that would bring up the connection selector model. Now, the other feature when you're working with multiple tools is, let's say you want to open up one tool on one side and then the other tool on the other side for comparison maybe. You can do that by selecting or right clicking on that particular tab and then selecting split right. I can do it on any of this. So let's say I can do split right on this one. Select this one. I can say move this to the right pane. So this moves to the right pane. This one keeps on the left pane. If I want to bring this back in, I can say move this to the left pane, so I can move things around. I can also do drag drop if I want to, and if I move everything back in, it's all going to be combined into the single interface that we had before. In the next video, we are going to do a deep dive in the settings options and then see different settings that we have, and then the options that you have when you change the settings, how do they apply to the toolbox. To download the toolbox, you can go to Power Platform ToolBox.com, where you can have the download button in the center of your screen. Make sure to check out our GitHub repo, and then if you like the toolbox, make sure that you add the stars to the repo. If you like the project, make sure that you are sponsoring the project by clicking on this particular button. Also, don't forget to join our community on Discord, where whether you are a user or whether you are a tool developer, we have separate channels for separate personas. And if you have any questions, you can raise those questions on the Discord channel. If you have any feature requests or have any bugs that you encounter, you can log those in on the repo under issues. Thank you very much for watching.